the Caledonian Elixir. Broadcasting from Glasgow, Scotland, welcome to the Caledonian Elixir. I'm your host, Vincent, and we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter X, Rumble, and now on Twitch. So for all you Twitchers, it's good to have you with us. And we're also on as a podcast on Spotify. So if you want to get us as a podcast, you can get us there. And don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and follow button. So we've got a very interesting show ahead. And for all of you who haven't seen us before, we're a show that essentially covers everything from politics to the paranormal, told with wit and true grit with guests and callers. And today we've got a couple of guests on, and we are also taking your calls if you want to come on and relate your experiences or ask a question. So if you want to come on the show later, hit that link in the description and enter your name, any name, doesn't need to be your real name, and we'll bring you on. So today's show will be brimming with all things paranormal, psi phenomena, possession, demons, ghosts. And if you have any stories relating to the occult, again, hit the link and come on. Our first guest today is the Reverend Mother Alison Shanes. And as the Reverend has been involved in cases of possession using the sacrament ritual of exorcism, I wanted to get her on and have a conversation about this. So, without further ado, the Reverend Shanes. Hello, Reverend.
Good evening. Thank you for having me on.
So, as I said, today's show, I hope will be brimming with everything paranormal, and I hope it'll be interesting. And after yourself, I hope to bring on some other guests. But could you describe, relate to me, what sparked your interest in the occult, and what led you to becoming a reverend?
I think this has been a lifelong thing. You know, this is not something that just happened one day. It's happened over years. But I think what ultimately pointed me to being a reverend was when I had a bad spirit in my house, and I performed an exorcism and I got rid of it. And it was a paranormal event. It was a supernatural event. And it made me realize that I could do that. I had the ability to do that. And if anyone else needed that help that I had needed myself, then I could do that for them. So do you want me to tell you what happened with the in the flat that time?
Yeah.
I'll tell you about it. Okay, so somebody had come in to fix the boiler. And when he left, and I'd got a funny feeling about him, but when he left, I didn't feel alone in the flat. And this is not something that I was used to. It's not something that happened to me ever before. And it was a really uncomfortable feeling. And that night there were sounds of things falling, dropping. And the next morning, I opened the curtains and there was a loud bang just where I'd opened the curtains, but nothing fell. it sounded like a hand been slammed down on top of like a desk or books or something like that. Nothing happened, and then the kitchen flooded that day. So I turned round to the room and I said, right, I know that someone is here and you cannot attach yourself to me. This is my home and I want you to leave now. Nothing for a few. And then I woke up, and I can't remember the exact sequence of events, but I woke up with the sound of scratching on the wall. The shelves and the bed was shaking.
Mm.
And I again told it to go away. And I think about another fortnight passed, and I woke up being attacked by this invisible presence. And I realized that this was going to take much more than me just telling it to go away. And I have to add that go away was not the words that I used. So it had me by the wrists, and I was fighting it off with all my strength, wide awake. So I carried out this ritual.
Sorry for interrupting, but when you say that attacked you, describe what do you mean by attacking you?
Well, I had been attacked before by what you would call a demonic presence. Now, this was either a negative spirit or a demonic presence. And it, well, as I say, I woke up and I felt someone had me by the wrists, and I was trying to push it off me. And that was it. I did it, you know, and I said used some uncouth language, shall we say, and suggested that I was the last person that it wanted to possess. And it left me at that point. And I thought I need to do an exorcism.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is obviously something here, and it's not going to leave until I do something much stronger. And the thing, you never know really what's going to happen with some people do cleansings that they think is an exorcism, and they don't fill the space with positivity after they've done a cleansing or an exorcism. And sometimes the thing comes back worse. So that's something for people to note, that, you know, you can't just go around a room with sage and hope something will go away. It's much more intense than that. So what I did was, because I had a pagan background as well, I merged the two things really, the Christianity and paganism in this ritual. I had the ritual Romanum. I used holy oil, holy water.
Sorry, you had the ritual Romanum.
The ritual Romanum, it's the sorry, I'm not catching everything you're saying, but it's the
right. Can you, am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yeah, right. It's just there's a time delay.
Right. Okay. What is the ritual Romanum? Because I'm aware that exorcism is a sacrament, a ritual of the Catholic Church. So is this a ritual of the Church? The Catholic Church?
It is. It's a Roman Catholic sacrament. And this is the ritual Romanum is what is used. The chapter on exorcism is in the ritual Romanum. I have to add, though, that every culture, it's not just Christianity, it's not just Catholicism that do exorcisms. In every culture, in every religion, there is some form of exorcism.
Mhm. Mhm.
So Buddhists, Hindus, Muslims, and all various denominations of Christianity do either an exorcism or some kind of deliverance service ceremony. They sometimes prefer to call it a deliverance ceremony or a healing ceremony, with the idea that they are promoting healing, which is exactly what you're doing. You're healing a situation. So so I've explained what the ritual Romanum is. So I used that to call in all the angels and the saints and every force from above that I could ask and beg, basically, to come in to that situation and help me. I would put crosses with holy oil on doors. I used, as I say, holy oil, holy salt. Everything was obviously charged and blessed. Salt, candle for fire. So earth, air, fire, and water were used. So that is the kind of pagan addition. As well as that, I also used a pagan symbol of protection, which is the pentagram. And I drew the pentagram as well. I used black salt on the doorstep, which is basically just salt and ash. You can use like ash from incense is quite normal to use, and it just darkens the salt, and you put that, you bless it with the intention that it will stop anything from coming back into your home. So it was a very big, intense, exhausting ritual, but I was quite determined to get rid of this thing, whatever it might be, and asking God, Jesus, Mary, all the angels, powers to come in to that situation and help me. And I think it was no, it wasn't that night. I think it was the next night that the sound of millions of hailstones could be heard on the ceiling. It's like the ceiling was charged, like the sound of hailstones on glass. That's what it sounded like. And I checked with the women upstairs, had something happened. I could not imagine what this sound could be. But later on, I was researching for a talk on demons and possession and exorcism. And I came across this book that stated that another priest had gone through exactly what I'd gone through. The shaking of the wall, the scratching on the wall. And this was after the attack. And then after the exorcism, the sound of millions of hailstones on the ceiling. I couldn't believe it because that's exactly what I'd heard. And that signifies the end of a successful exorcism. It's the energy leaving, the dark energy leaving and dissipating. And the place was, I don't know how to explain it to you, but it was so light and charged with positiveness. You know, it just, there was an incredible shift in the feeling in that flat. So much so that when my mother came in the next day, she commented on it and she asked what I had done because it felt different. And she said as well that it feels lighter in here. What have you done? And I just said to her, I've done a cleansing, you know, and that's probably why you're feeling that way. So I didn't tell her I'd done this major exorcism. But
were you a reverend before this or after?
after.
Is this what led you to becoming one?
I would say so. I mean, there's other things in my past that have led me down this path that I didn't, I suppose, realise, oh, I should be a reverend, but I wasn't one until that point. And then I realised that I can do this. This is what I've been getting pushed towards, you know, for many years.
So you felt that was your calling, and those experiences that you feel were sign of a haunting or a possession is essentially what was, you know, that calling, that moment where you realised that I had to do this. This was that it's real, you know, and I should be
Yeah,
more involved.
exactly. I mean, I'd had an attack before, which, whether it was an actual incubus, an actual night demon, or whether it was what you want to call sleep paralysis and hallucination, some kind of sleep disorder. That to me for many years, it was neither here nor there what it was, but the experience that I had was real. When I woke up and I'd been having a bad dream, I tried to wake my partner, which I couldn't. And this is something that is quite usual with incubus experiences. And there was, the room was exactly the same, but it was a different colour. It was a bluish colour. And I found it an almost like ethereal blue. You know, that's, I've just said before that it was a strange shade of blue, but it just had this ethereal quality to it. And the next thing, I was flipped on my back and pinned down by this incubus demon, a demonic being that has been cited going back to the first books of literature, where it's mentioned. The book will come back to me in a minute. Gilgamesh. It's the night demon is mentioned in Gilgamesh. So this has been part of human life.
So there isn't
For
this Gilgamesh,
millennia.
ancient epic about a Syrian, he's a Syrian king or a warrior, a Sumerian, sorry.
Yeah, that's about right. But there's other characters in it, and it includes a night demon. You'll hear there's you'll have heard of Lilith.
Mm-hmm.
Lilith, the first wife of Adam, who was a demon, or that's what she gets called. It's up for debate. That's up for debate. But some mythologies, they mythologize her as demonic. Lilith and Lilith is one, and there's another one that it's Lil something. Lilu and Lilith, so it's the Lil, and one is the female night demon and the other is the male night demon. Now there are other characters involved in an incubus attack, but primarily there's a male and a female. Often there's also an old woman, so that's why it's called old hag syndrome, because quite often an old woman was present, and there was indeed an old woman present in the room, standing by the window.
So, sorry, so you were conveying that you were flipped on your bed and pinned down as
Yeah, well, this demon was on top of me. It had one long fingernail that was trying to cut my throat. Sometimes the night demon, it's often sexual, but sometimes it is a murderous intent. So that was the case here.
what, sexual or murderous intent?
Yeah, primarily those two things are the two things that I've heard.
And
Yeah.
why do you feel it was happening to you?
I mean, I think I have a fair idea that I was in a not that great a relationship, although some people have suggested that these beings can affect relationships negatively. But I certainly wasn't in a great relationship. And also, it had just come out that this person had been sexually abused, which I found abhorrent. I found it really quite horrific. And, I was having to help this man through this uh, horrific experience that he'd had, and so I think it, did it crack my mind? Did it draw something in? I don't know, but there wasn't a sexual component to it, which I think is quite. I don't know if it's unusual or not, but often these beings do have a sexual intent, but this one didn't. And it just said, "You thought you could get away from me, didn't you?" And it tried to cut my throat with its fingernail. The old hag was by the window and she was laughing into her hand. Um,
And so
what
you saw multiple apparitions in your room at night while you were being attacked.
Yeah, in that event, yes. In that event, there was two. There was the young male, and the old hag.
Did
Yeah.
you interpret it back then as what you're interpreting it as now? In other words, when it was happening, well, you have that, of course, that experience, and you want to escape it, and you want it to stop. However, when you had time to process it, not long afterwards, did you perceive it then as a demonic or spiritual attack, or did you put it down to some sort of psychological um, pathology, for example?
I don't know which I wanted it to be honest. If I'm being honest, I don't know which I wanted it to be, because really you can't know 100%. Psychologists will say that was a psychological event, but I'll bet they've never actually experienced it, and experienced it like, I'm talking to somebody in the room. There was what appeared to be a physical being or two physical beings in that room, and I felt as though I was wide awake.
Mhm.
So, uh, you know, afterwards I thought, do you know what? It doesn't actually matter whether this is a sleep disorder, some kind of psychosis, which I
Mm.
had never had before or since, um, or did that actually was that actually demonic? And I'd asked around and I asked friends, have you had this experience before? Well, most of them just looked at me like, you know, she's nuts, you know, she's got horns in her head. But some people did say, yeah, I've had something similar happen. So I started reading about it and trying to find out about it, and found out that other people, there were certain things other people had experienced that were the same, like not being able to waken up their partner being one thing. An open window seemed to be another thing. Some people found that if they played some soft music or had a soft light on, it didn't happen so much. Sleep deprivation seemed to trigger it in some cases. So that would, you know, maybe lend itself to the theory that it's a sleep disorder. But for me, it was the fact that whatever it was, I experienced it. I wasn't lying about it when I told people. I experienced it. So it's what it means to you at the end of the day. It's what these things mean to you. And I really didn't know at the time what to do with it. But I had other sort of sleep experiences, sleep paralysis. And over time, I gradually, my fear turned in some cases to anger. And it was that emotion that I used to get rid of anything that was trying to attack me.
You said that you said you were researching. You began to research material. Um, you know, we live in a world where like polemic thoughts such as that, espoused by people like Alistair Crowley and um, Osmond Spare, is like prima materia for those interested in the occult. And then you've got other names such as like Michael Aquino from the Church of Set, Anton Zander LaVey from the Church of Satan. And in their material, you can find a methodology for evocation, ritual for protection. Uh, but it's rare to find someone who is a reverend or a priest um, talking about possession, demons as a real occurrence. In fact, the last time I remember hearing it, it was a Father Malachi Martin on the Art Bell show many a moon ago. You know, we're talking about 20 years ago because Art Bell's not been with us for a while, right? You know, he's
Yeah.
passed away. So like, what? So when this happened to you and you became a reverend, how did you become an exorcist? Like, have you encountered other persons who alleged to have been possessed and you performed ritual sacrament on them in order to cleanse them?
I have met several people, and have performed exorcisms with one person. The demon manifested and I got rid of it. Unfortunately, despite my best efforts, they kept on letting the demon back in, against the advice that I gave. So I decided to stop working with them because they weren't taking my advice, and
Can you
there's no
describe how a
point.
demon manifests? How do you know when a demon is manifesting?
Because the person can start, their voice changes, so you get this sort of guttural sound. Sometimes there can be a little bit of, like, saliva or foaming. They were writhing about on their settee. And they were cursing me a lot. But I was surrounded by I felt the power, and this is, when I talk about this is, you have no idea how not me this is, when I say these things, but I have to just tell you what I felt. And what I felt was surrounded and protected by the angels and the saints and by Mother Mary. And I felt that love and protection around me. So I never at any point felt frightened. I have to say that I always ask for somebody to be there with the person. You should never be alone if you're doing something like that. And I wanted to make sure that they knew that they were safe. And so one of their friends came along as well. Now, afterwards, for several reasons, I realized that I really had to employ rules, my own rules. And number one was not taking the information face value that I was getting. And for example, I like to know that the person has seen a doctor. I like to know that that's been ruled off, that there is nothing medically wrong with them. Because if somebody has something like, a psychiatric illness that requires medication, or, heavens above, a brain tumor or something like that, an exorcism isn't going to cure a brain tumor. So I'm going to be wasting their precious time when they could be going and seeing a doctor and getting that helped. And in this case, somebody else came forward and said that the information I'd been given was not correct, that they hadn't seen a doctor. I was told that they had seen a doctor. They had seen several doctors and psychiatrists and blah, blah, blah. I was then given the information that that was not correct. So I decided to make it that I have to speak to the doctor. That's one thing. That's one of my rules. Another rule is that they come along when I go round. I have this thing called Glasgow Pilgrims, and we go around all the different churches in Glasgow. And that's one of my rules, is that they have to come along to Glasgow Pilgrims. And this is a checklist that the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, does as well. People, they advise them to come along for X amount of weeks to church because they want to observe them. They want to see that they are actually committed to the process. If you're coming to a Catholic priest for this, I would imagine, for one thing, that you believe in Jesus, that you believe that Christ will save you. Because if you don't believe that, why are you asking a Catholic priest to help you? If you are more inclined towards Buddhism, go and speak to a Buddhist, and no hard feelings. But I need to know that the people are cared for by a medical profession, that a doctor knows that I'm going to be involved and is okay with that, because perhaps perhaps everything else has been tried. In some cases, neurologists have said, "Yeah, this is a neurological condition, but for some reason, exorcism works." We don't really know how, but
But
exorcism
sorry, if it was a neurological condition and exorcism worked, would that not mean it was psychosomatic on that case?
It could be. It could be.
And before I dive
I
further into this, I mean, I'd like to just say that there is that night side, that dark side to practically everything, whether you're talking about politics or religion, and then you've got history and mystery. And think of the mystical schools like Kabbalah, Sufism, Gnosticism. There is that cellar of the soul, isn't there, that exists in all of us and in all these big, religious churches and organization. And,
Mhm.
you know, what's that expression?
The thing is, had I not encountered demonic things, I would put it all down to a psychosomatic disorder. Now, I'm only giving you, like, for an example there of what a neurologist would say. But the point is that I think it's very important to include these people in the discussion, because there, as I said, there could well be something physically or psychologically wrong, and I need to have that ruled out. Another thing is witnessing paranormal events. So it could be levitation, it could be speaking in other languages,
Mhm.
it could be things moving about the home. I never experienced that with the person that I worked with. And I've had two other inquiries. One I met her for a coffee, and the other was just over email. In both cases, I asked to speak to their doctor. In both cases, the amount of excuses that are given for you not, oh, they can't get in touch with their doctor, or they've just moved to Glasgow and they don't have a doctor, and they can't get an appointment with a doctor. The amount of excuses were just, and I said, well, I'm sorry, but I'll not take this any further. I have to safeguard both of us in this situation. And if I don't have the okay from your doctor to do this, then I don't feel like I'm safeguarding either of us. So that's a conversation that I want to open up. And as I say, it's the same kind of excuses every time. So that's where I'm at. I would love to do the Roman Catholic, the Vatican exorcism course. I would love to do that. I've never done that. I think that would be really worthwhile.
So see, in regards to what you were saying about having a medical check before having a GP or some kind of doctor or psychiatrist check the person before they come to you. That's quite germane to what I want to ask you, because not that long ago I read the novel The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. Have you read that before?
I read it when I was 14. Yeah.
You have read it. Right, right.
Yeah.
That's good. For the audience, right, because it's not well known, but the author Blatty, right, was actually an intelligence officer who specialised in psychological warfare, right? So he was a psychologist, but he specialised in psyops for the government. And there are many things in that book that is missing in the film. So, for example, in the book, it leaves it open as to whether the little girl is actually possessed, or instead suffering from MPD, or DID, multiple personality disorder, distant identity disorder, because in the book she experiences child abuse, I think it was one of our mother's friends who was abusing her, and she is involved in his death. So in order for her mind to cope with the abuse, her mind sort of schisms and creates an an alternative personality. So it's essentially leaves it open to whether it's MPD. But here's the really important part of that, because it can be true. It can be both MPD and possession. And that's what Blatty was really conveying. Because as a psychologist and someone who's involved in psychological operations, manipulating minds and studying multiple personality disorder, he understood this, but it really had to do with the nomenclature. Like, if we look at the case through the linguistic matrix of psychiatry, it's called multiple personality disorder. But if you're using a religious occult language model and describing it through the sort of terminology that the church would use, it's called possession. So it's sort of like psychiatry takes the sacrament, the numinous, the spirit out of these things, and it makes it more scientific and material. But it can be both. It can be possession and multiple personality disorder. It just really depends what sort of filter you're looking at through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it could depend on what filter you're looking through, but it also can be two things at the one time. Somebody can have a psychiatric, so they might be schizophrenic, for example, but something bad has got in there as well. Something demonic has got in there too. So it can be both on that level,
Yeah, I mean, even psychiatrists, sorry, even psychiatrists have said, like R.D. Lang, the Scottish psychiatrist, believed that schizophrenia was something that wasn't just in the brain, but it was environmental. But the environment, the family, the community helped shape and create schizophrenia. It wasn't just a neurochemical imbalance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I guess I can't really comment, but because I'm not a mental health professional, that's why I like to have a mental health professional on board. Well, I mean, in one sense I am, because I'm a cognitive behavioral hypnotherapist, but
Right.
I prefer to have somebody with mental health experience on board so that they can deal with that side of it. I don't have to think about that side of it. I can go on with dealing with the spiritual aspect of it, because if it is the psychiatric part is one thing, but there is a spiritual side to our nature, and this is a spiritual attack. This is a spiritual illness, and that's where I come in. That's what I deal with. So I'm aware in the scientific side of it, and I'm aware of the importance of not having somebody be put in danger because they've delayed treatment, for example. I would never want that to happen. So, but that's up to somebody else to deal with. So
Sorry,
deal
can I,
with.
can I ask you, can I ask you a question? You said you or you've used cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy. Cognitive hypnotherapy. How have you used that, and how has that benefited yourself or your clients? The people you have used it on.
Oh well, I was a hypnotherapist years ago, so I don't use it now. I've never used it. I've used relaxation techniques in the situation with people, but not hypnotherapy as such. But years ago, I worked as a cognitive behavioural hypnotherapist, so I was trained and insured and all that kind of stuff.
And do you think guided meditation and sometimes even utilizing like solfeggio sounds to alter the the brainwave resonance of the brain, these things really help in order to you know get to take the patient from where he is in a troubled place, in a troubled place space, to somewhere better
Mhm.
where he can cope and confront the things in his life or her life with a more balanced and you know
I think everything is easier to deal with when you are relaxed and calm. Everything's easier to deal with. You automatically feel happier. So it should be the first thing that you learn to do, if you're going to see a hypnotherapist.
mhm,
I would say is to, learn relaxation. Then usually that is like you'll get a block of a treatment, hypnotherapy treatment. So say it's maybe even just three to five treatments, something like that. The first thing that you'll probably learn is relaxation. It's one of the most important things, and it's usually one of the root causes. It's usually the root cause, but then there might be other things that people are looking for, like confidence. So you'd maybe put them into the situation. Think about your life now, how you think, how you feel, how you act, and how you want to think, feel, and act. And then
mhm,
imagine that you are in that situation and you're thinking and feeling and acting that way. What is the outcome? So that would perhaps be, session number 2. So that's the kind of stuff that I did when I was doing
and
hypnotherapy.
another area that really interests me and I'd like to get your views on is the use of certain drugs to create a different state of consciousness, a different awareness, to bring in alleged other entities. So you could think of the shamans of Siberia,
I was going to say,
voodoo, Haitian voodoo, for example. Or the use of psychedelic drugs by the Native Americans to evoke certain entities. So, what do you think about the use of psychedelic drugs or other forms of drugs to commune with a different entity?
yeah. Well, I'm not a shaman. I have certainly I've researched into that. I've done a talk on psychedelics in religion, and they certainly were used in religion. They were probably even used in early Christianity.
Mhm,
There's in artwork, you see mushrooms appearing in the artwork of early Christian, in churches and early Christian artwork. So yeah, it certainly was used, and I think that as you say, it alters your state of consciousness. It makes you become aware of perhaps things that you can't normally see, and you're then able to communicate with those things. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing, but psychedelics is something that fascinates me.
mhm,
Fungi fascinates me. I just think, it's not an animal, but it's not a plant. What is this thing?
mhm,
There was something on Netflix. There's a great documentary on Netflix. I'm not sure if it's still on there, but it shows you these networks of underneath the ground that allow trees to communicate with one another. and know the health of one another. And it's through these, and these networks are almost like neural pathways underneath the soil that are created by fungi. Absolutely fascinating stuff. I also, my degree's in classics, so you can ask a question.
Well, it is very interesting how psilocybin and all these drugs have been, allegedly used by, cults in the past. Even Christian cults,
Yeah.
uh, and other, religious, spiritual groups. How, however, you were saying there that you've been involved in classics. Do you mean Greek, Latin, ancient Greek and Latin?
Yeah, yeah, that's what my degree's in.
Right.
So
Sorry, I want to follow up on this one because it's very interesting to me. So, I would like to know how much you've studied in regards to that, the classics, and how you feel um, modern interpretations of the Bible have changed the message of the Bible. As you know, like the original Bible was written in Greek. So, how do you feel? The translations or mistranslations to the language has affected our
okay.
understanding of the original core message of the Gospels?
Well, first of all, I when I studied classics for 4 years, that was, as I say, my degree. It didn't cover uh, biblical studies. Biblical studies is in the religious studies department. So I was in the classical studies department. I did do ancient religion though. And just to go back to the point about psychedelics, that's when I encountered Eleusis
Mhm,
and the rituals that were done at Eleusis and the
mhm,
potion that was drank there, the kykeon that was drank there,
mhm,
this magical drink that uh, gave you the answer to life, the universe, and everything. This big reveal at the end of there would be days-long processions, and you went through these various elements to get to this the big event, and then there was this big reveal. You drank the potion, and then I don't know. I have a feeling that they lit up something. So I have a feeling that light perhaps triggered something, and this whole experience took away the fear of death. Now that's something that people say when they've had some kind of psychedelic like magic mushrooms or whatever, that it has taken away the fear of death.
Have you
So
ever used psychedelics yourself, magic
have
mushrooms?
I ever? I don't think I could say that on live.
No, well, you couldn't,
I've never had mushrooms.
yeah. Well, you could explore that, microdose even, to see if it opens
Yeah,
yourself up to
yeah.
something positive. But have you ever heard of a theory that Christ, when Jesus was on the cross, um, he was on a particular kind of snake venom, a psychedelic that was causing the hallucinogenic state? Have you
No,
ever heard of? You haven't heard of that?
no,
Um,
that's interesting.
hence why, hence why they gave him the vinegar on the cloth,
Okay.
because the vinegar acted as an antidote. Um,
Oh,
that he was essentially tripping on the cross. That's what they alleged. And there's an interesting classicist. He's been on a lot of the big podcasts, such as the Danny Jones, and it's had tens of millions. And he was actually the Catholic Church. Um, argued, he claimed this guy himself was possessed, and he was also, I think, a professor at a university, and he lost his role, his job at being at the university because there was such a case against him, that they and I'm trying to remember his name. Sorry, do you think you could check the guy out? Try find his name out. No, he's a bald. He's bald, and remember that I showed you on the Danny Jones show. I'm trying. The name has
And
left.
why did he lose his job?
Well, again, he's a classicist, and his speciality, was in Greek, and he's studied thousands of texts, thousands of ancient Greek texts, and he there was this stage play that he was responsible for, and the symbolism of the stage play was a bit too literal. There was a phallus used, and because this was in a university, a lot of people complained. His name is Anton Hillman.
Okay.
Amon Hillman. Dr. Amon Hillman.
Right.
He's also an MS in bacteriology, and he's a classicist too. And his take on a lot of these on ancient Christianity and on Jesus is mind blowing. I've never heard anything like it.
Some people are ahead of their time, and some people go down a rabbit hole and disappear up their up their
Well,
own.
he looks at it through the prism of reading the original ancient Greek. So he reads the original ancient Greek, and he says, "This is what they were saying back then, and what you're saying now is not what they were saying back then." And there's a lot of things he points to that really does take you back, like in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus was with a small boy, and the boy had a loincloth, and when the Roman centurions came upon Jesus, um, Jesus looks at the centurions and he says, "Why have you come upon me like I am a lacey?" And a lacey in Greek is a robber, a pirate, someone that steals. So Jesus is with a young child, but again he's in a loincloth, and the centurions come upon him, and he's like, "Why are you calling me a robber?" And his interpretation of that is that he's accusing Jesus Christ of stealing this child. And as you know, even a lot of the apostles back then were quite young. So you became you became a, what would you call it? Like a, if you were you were usually in your teenage years, if you were beginning your teaching, what was this? What was the terminology for it?
Well, rabbi means teacher, so it'd be teaching, if
Yeah,
that's
but if you were to become it's not, the word isn't student, but if you were to become like a, if you were to become like a student of a rabbi, a lot the years this normally took place was your teenage years from like 13 to 16. And so when Jesus was caught with this child in the Garden of Gethsemane, which is in the Bible, it is quite confusing. Like, what is that text about? What is that verse about in the Bible? And so he looks at the original Greek and goes, which describes what was taking place in that verse at that time. And so it's really insightful. And sorry,
well,
maybe I suppose.
there's someone else lost their job, and it was sort of similar circumstances. I'm trying to think. His name is John something, I think, and he was a professor of languages. He knew these ancient languages inside out, and he said that there were these certain sections in the Bible that related to the word mushroom.
Yes.
There are certain sections of the Bible that is pointing people to psychedelics, and he
Mhm.
was inspired.
I have heard this, yeah.
You know,
I've heard
you,
this.
you've heard that one.
Yeah. I would just go continue. Could explain it a little more.
I would have to have all my notes in front of me about it, and I'm trying to think the man's name, but I think his first name was John. I certainly can make my notes available to people if they want them, or you can listen to my talk on YouTube. It's up on YouTube on the psychedelics and religion, and you'll hear in there that I talk about this man who, as I say, he saw that there was symbolism, and we all know that a lot of the Bible is based on symbolism. It's not necessarily meant to be taken literally. There may be some historic events thrown in there, but
Mhm.
there is also symbolic messages that are in there as well.
Yeah, and then there is the Gnostic texts, but it's going in a completely different
And
direction,
and then
written
you
at
get
the time.
Gnostic texts, yeah.
And I
Um,
mean, I can remember reading, the Gospel of Philip and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. The Gospel of Philip really affected how I see Christianity, to be quite honest. Um,
in what
and
way?
well, as I said, I haven't prepared for it.
I know, I know.
I've actually got an episode on it, and however, there's a verse where it says, "Well, Jesus," I'll guess it, where it says Jesus uh, wrote his name on my head, and then I was free. And there are many other verses in that. One sec. There's other verses in that cause me to pause and think to myself, what are they trying to communicate there? And I came to the conclusion that what he is essentially arguing, that the idea of the resurrection is a sort of spiritual psychological phenomenon where you resurrect as a Christian inside, like when Jesus Christ said the heaven is within. He wasn't
Yeah,
taught, he was, you
that's
know
exactly what he said. The kingdom of God is within you. And
so
I
yeah.
think that is exactly, I would agree with that.
So
That
how I interpreted and understood that is to be a Christian, to be resurrected, to be reborn, is to be a Christian of the mind, like God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. Spirit in Greek is the mind. So it's talking about the holy mind,
yeah,
having a Christ consciousness, to take on the behaviors, the mindset of Christ, of Jesus.
yeah,
Um, and
exactly.
and and there's a difference there between the original Nazarene, who alleged he was the king and travelled throughout Israel or Judea to these places where the different tribes of Israel settled, and conveyed, behaved as a rabbi and teached to the crowds. T- I think there's a difference between what Jesus was conveying and what the later you know, organizations and pre, um, the apostles later on believed he was. It's like when he was alive, he was a rabbi, and when he died, he became a god.
Hmm.
And they became Christs themselves. And I think that's what it is to be a Christian, to have the kingdom of heaven, as you said, within. And this idea that it is something where you pass away and you are remade in a different dimension.
Hmm.
That doesn't jive with my understanding of it, because, no, for example, Jesus Christ, he was a Jew. He believed in the resurrection. You know,
Hmm.
he, didn't believe you died and you went to this mystical place, somewhere in a body, but it was like St. Paul's interpolation of it. In fact, isn't he even asked by the Pharisees, if a brother, if a wife dies and then she is given to the brother, and then the brother dies, and then she's given to the other brother, who is she given to in
Yeah.
the afterlife? And then what does Jesus respond by saying? He's like, you misunderstand, you're not given to anyone in the
Mhm.
afterlife.
Mhm.
So, because he believes in the resurrection.
Mhm. And
So,
in fact, this is another early Christian thing, was the belief was not so much resurrection as reincarnation. And at some point this changed. Now, I don't know exactly how true that is, but I have certainly heard that theory quite a lot, that initially the belief was in reincarnation.
wasn't uh, was it Saint Thomas who allegedly went to India? Was it the Apostle Thomas? Sorry, who allegedly went to India and found and created his own church. There's a church
I'm not
in India
entirely sure.
that's around 1900 years old, and there are texts there that convey that Thomas founded this chapel. I think it was
Right,
Thomas.
okay, okay.
Um, and then there is, I don't know if it's Paramahansa Yogananda. I may have the 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 wrong name, but he wrote I think it was the Resurrection of Christ in the Yoga of Jesus, and it's a large text. It's like 3,000 pages, and I read that, and he has the same idea that it was about reincarnation, and Jesus was actually someone who travelled to India and studied these mystery schools in Greece
Yeah.
and in India, and he believed in these ideas of
Mhm,
reincarnation.
mhm. Yeah. I didn't know that's good. I'll need to read that book. Now, I knew that certainly this had been said about reincarnation, but I didn't know where they'd
Mm.
actually got that information. So that's good. I will need to look up in that.
Sorry, could you check the name of the author of the Resurrection of Christ? He was an Indian, um, who he actually travelled to the United States in the early 20th century and brought over Kriya Yoga, a form of yoga, to
I
the
I
West.
I, I think it's Yogananda.
You're
Um,
right, Paramahansa Yogananda. Yeah.
I think it's Yogananda because he was his writing it was read a lot by Elvis Presley. I'm giving
Mm,
a talk on Elvis as a mystic next year. And Yogananda was one of the authors that he read thoroughly. He took all these books, hundreds of books, on tours with him. And Yogananda was one, and the other was Khalil Gibran, and his book, The Prophet, especially his book, The Prophet.
mhm.
And he bought this book for all his friends and handed it out. But I certainly know that he was very interested in Yogananda's work. So no doubt he read the book that you're talking about.
Mhm. And again, it's a masterpiece, but it is huge. It's like there are 3,000 pages to it, and I
Wow.
got through it. I sort of gave up on like page 1,500, to be honest. Um, it does get a
That's
little
what
bit
me with
repetitive.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, yeah. But, I mean, Lord of the Rings is a classic, and I was asking my friend who hasn't seen Lord of the Rings to maybe give it a watch. And she was like, "Oh, maybe I should check, read the book first." And I said to her, "Look, I'll be honest, the film's better. To me, the film was a masterpiece." And
It was, but as when I was reading it, I just felt like I was walking and you know that sensation like you're walking in mud and you can't get your feet out. I
Yeah.
just felt it was so like slow and
Yes. Yes.
you know, I think it was just so descriptive, and
Overly descriptive. Yes.
you know, and that takes up a lot of time and
Mhm.
a lot of thought as well. So it definitely is a thinker. Um,
But there is one other thing, and my producer found it. It was that verse from the Bible uh where have you got the right? Is it so? It's found in the Gospel of Mark, 4,
Mhm.
14, 51 to 52, where it describes a young boy following Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, wearing only a linen cloth, and he was fled when seized by the centurions. And again, this is what Amon Hillman was referencing, and it really confounded him. What is that passage about? Because I've never had that read to me, described to me in church.
Mhm.
And so what he is alleging, Amon Hillman, is it's part of a mystery school, but there
Mhm.
are certain psychedelic drugs being used, and children were used. Um, you know, yeah, yeah, yeah. The children were used uh, in these psychedelic ceremonies, and so he goes back to the original Greek and what it said in the original texts about
Right. Okay.
in the Gospel of Mark, and again how Jesus Christ is talking to the centurions and saying, "Why have you come upon me, as I am a lasty, like a robber of children?"
Right.
And and again, as you know, a lot of the apostles, even though you know that some of the apostles were well into their 20s, but some of the apostles were actually quite young, and it was part of, you know, just what happened that you began your apprenticeship. You began, you know, you became a student under a
Mhm.
rabbi when you were
Mhm.
round about between 13 to 16. So it is interesting, and I know it was a completely different time, you know, thousands of years ago. Um, but
It wasn't. It's not unusual for this uh, pedagogic. I think is the word. This uh, idea of a master and a student and a much younger man being taught by an older man. That's I think prevalent in several cultures.
mhm.
Um,
But if you remember, that's when Jesus Christ was arrested, and he was, you know, taken and eventually crucified. But it follows that scene.
okay.
So he's caught with a boy in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he is then arrested by the centurions. And Jesus' defense is, "You have come upon me as I am a lasty," and it's in the Greek. And so I recommend that you check this Amon Hillman out. He is a
I
very intelligent.
will because it's again. This is I'm interested in um, linguistics, but I'm not a linguist myself. So
He was
uh,
actually he was accused by the church of being possessed himself. So to this
who
day,
Hellman
yes, to this day, the church believes Hillman is possessed.
really? And does he believe he's possessed?
No, no. Hillman did a lot of things. You know, he used to work at a lot of archaeological digs sites in Israel, and
Hmm.
he is a bacteriologist too. You used to dissect the brain, and as I said, he's also a classicist, and he's studied thousands of Greek texts. So he's a highly intelligent man, and
Okay.
again, he reminds me a bit of Terence McKenna.
Oh, I
There.
love Terence
He's a bit,
McKenna.
yeah, he's a bit far out. He's a bit strange and unusual, and how he can convey himself and communicate is a bit, you know, like he was a hippie in the 60s, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's just um because what he's saying or alleging is so controversial, and how he communicates himself is so strange and bizarre that they believe he is possessed. But again, he knows the original Greek. He's studied the original Greek, and to this day, no one will confront him, debate him on these things.
Mhm.
I've got a question. Someone has asked me in the chats, what do you think about the start of Christianity? But was it started on the model of the Greek gods?
Uh, I don't think it was started on the model of the Greek gods. No, I wouldn't say so. But as time went on, Christianity, evolved and changed and used bits from all other different religions to make up the beliefs within Christianity as we know it. So for example, where the feast days were set around the pagan solar calendar. So you had like Christmas Day, so you've got Yule on the 21st, the winter solstice on the 21st. The sun then for 3 days seems to stop. And on the 25th is when they noticed that it was coming back again. So it was coming back from winter, midwinter. That was like the longest night, and now and the shortest day, and now the days were going to get longer. And this, to the ancient astronomers, was visible apparently from the 25th of December. So the sun had returned, and I think that was used as part of it became part of the mythology, that the Christ was reborn, the light was reborn into the world. If you look at all the Christmas carols, you'll see this idea of the light coming back into the world being used time and time again in Christmas carols. And when you see it, it'll fascinate you. You'll see it all the time now.
It's not. Were you alluding to the idea that it's a form of sun worship, that light is involved, and did you see that disc?
I was and I wasn't, because I think that in Christianity they've the symbol of the sun being like the light of the world, and Jesus, who epitomizes love and mercy and all that's good and all that's light, brings light into the world and enlightens us and gives us knowledge. And I think that's all wrapped up in that symbolism, perhaps, of the sun. Years ago, some people did actually worship the sun as Jesus.
Yeah,
And
guess what?
so there is a pagan side to that. There's also an astronomical side to all of this as well. In the now, I don't have you seen Zeitgeist, the documentary Zeitgeist?
No, I haven't.
Right, okay, because I thought you'd probably know what I was going to say next. But the Orion's belt, the 3 stars on Orion's belt, are also known as the 3 kings. And as they go across the sky, they are followed by the brightest star in the sky, which is Sirius. And where they the part of the sky that they set is the part of the sky where the sun rises on Christmas morning. So there's a bit of, mythological symbolism there. So that's another thing.
Sorry, have you heard of in Change Times? I see your question. I will ask her in a moment. I'll ask the Reverend in a moment. What do you think of the idea that Saturn was originally worshipped by the Jews, for example, or not even the Jews, but the Canaanites and the Canaanites eventually went on to create the religion as we know as Judaism. But there's a lot of terms like El and Canaan and ancient I think it's Canaan.
El means God.
El, yeah, and you've got the Elohim, but El actually is synonymous with Saturn. And you find that in so many texts, like as I say, like Elohim, Israel, Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, it's in all of these words. This sometimes it's like a suffix or a prefix, but it's so. And then you've got the Shabbat, which became the Sabbath, which was worshipping on the day of Saturday, which was known as Saturn Day. So there are so many parallels with the worship of Saturn and early Canaanite society. And as we know, they called the ancient Hebrews, if you read the book of Exodus, as you know, they referred to the land of Canaan as the land of milk and honey because they knew of the land of Canaan because, Egypt had experienced a large, migration issue from Canaan for centuries. So a lot of the Canaanites were citizens essentially of Egypt, and it was generational. You had many generations of Canaanites living in Egypt, and as you know, because you've read Exodus, they left and wanted to return to the land of milk and honey. But then when they returned, the people of Canaan didn't want them in, because these people had spent over lives in Egypt. They didn't, think they were true Canaanites, and so I think that's just very interesting when you look at the.
I'm wondering because you mentioned Saturn there, that I'm wondering if it's Saturn that, just for an added bit of symbolism, that moves in the shape of the Star of David.
Yes, yeah.
I think it is, because I know that Venus you can make out of the shape of it a heart and a rose. There are two things that you can, the path that it follows is a heart, and if you keep on following it, it makes a rose as well.
It's not just that. In the North Pole of Saturn is a massive star. There is a star in the North Pole of Saturn. It's shaped as a star. So I said that it's a massive star. There is a massive storm in the shape of a star. It's a massive hexagon.
Yes.
And that's incredible when you look at an image of it. You see this incredibly massive hexagonal shaped storm. And when you look at the symbolism that the Jews and Canaanites used, again, it was the star and the ring. And the star and the ring are associated with Saturn. Saturn was historically called the Lord of the Rings. And if you look at the meaning of Saturn, historically, according to Greeks, like you had Kronos and you had Jupiter, and Saturn represented the old god that was usurped by Jupiter. And so there's a definite connection there between Saturn and Judaism, and
It
I would
definitely sounds like it, doesn't it? And I'm fascinated by what this is called astrotheology. And it is fascinating. There's lots to look at in that, and lots that I still yet learning, but it is fascinating stuff.
can I ask you one more question because I've got a question by someone else in the chat.
Sure.
Change times. Take it off. So, Change Times is saying there is a difference between reincarnation and resurrection. Also, if we face judgment by God at the end of time, here then clearly there is no coming back again. So, what was the question? There's a difference. Yeah, yeah. So, what have you got? What do you think about the difference in scripture between what the Jews believed then about resurrection and the idea that is a more Eastern theological concept and belief in reincarnation, and also the role of judgment in that as well?
Yeah. I guess you're asking me what do I believe, and
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's in this chat.
I've always kind of felt like I'm a bit of a fence sitter when it comes to this, because on one hand, how would I know? You know, I'm not. I don't have the knowledge of either resurrection or reincarnation. Although I have had experiences doing past life regression,
Mm,
and um, I've had flashbacks to that's made me think that I lived in another time, and that's happened several times. So if that's, I guess, the case, then I would be more inclined towards reincarnation. But I don't think you just reincarnate forever and ever.
mhm.
I don't know if there's a choice. I don't know if it's that we are here to learn certain lessons, and until we learn those lessons, we perhaps have to come back to learn them, and then eventually go back to source, go back to God, whatever your preference for calling it is. So I would maybe be more inclined towards that. That we come back until we've learned the lessons that we're supposed to learn, and then we go back to God when we're supposed to.
Yeah, I guess St. Paul's interpretation was like a form of astral resurrection, whereas the original Jews believed you resurrected in a new body on earth, whereas Paul
Mhm.
believed you were in the ether somewhere with a spiritual body. And this form of astral resurrection, again,
Mhm.
it doesn't really jive either with like the text recovered at Nag Hammadi, whether you're reading
Mhm.
the Gospel of Magdalene, Thomas, or Philip,
Mhm.
or others. It to me, it's never it's never convinced me. I felt that that is what's going to happen
Mhm.
once I die. I, and I
What
don't
do
know.
you, what do you think is going to happen?
I'll be honest, it depends on the day. It really I'll be honest,
That's
I've
right.
went I've been
An
I've
honest
went
answer.
I think I have these models, these you can call them simulations,
Mhm.
where I understand my life um through a sort of language model again, how I'm explaining things. Because if I have no awareness of Christianity or I have no awareness of resurrection, then I'm not going to look at life through the rubric, through the matrix of resurrection. because I'm not aware of the idea. So, and I must know of that. And as I've grown and gotten older, I have learned more. So my understanding of the world and my views of what could take place once I die have evolved. But
Mhm.
again, I'm sort of like the older I am, the more I know I don't know. So I've become ever increasingly aware of my own ignorance.
The wise man knows he knows nothing, or something like that.
Yeah, I know nothing. I don't know what anyone listens to me. But yeah, I think we're all just trying to and again, you're at Reverend, so you've got your beliefs and your convictions, and it's much more devout and stronger than my own because I'm not the one, um, you know, uh, but
I don't know. I mean, even priests have their doubts about certain things on certain days. You know, that's life. We're still human.
I have one more. Sorry, one last question because I think someone's joined late to the program, and
Okay.
they're just asked there, what is her religious beliefs?
I'm with the Old Catholic Apostolic Church, so it's very like Roman Catholicism. I believe in Jesus. I believe in Mary. Believe in God. Um, I'm very drawn to Mary actually, and the church that I have is in the Glasgow Theosophical Society. It's Our Lady of the Mystical Rose, and we practice mystical elements of mysticism there, like simple things like healing and meditation and prophecy,
Mhm.
As well as having the mass, the Catholic mass beforehand. I don't know if that's answered the question fully.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think it has. He hasn't responded, so um, so I think I'm going to wrap this segment of the show up. However, Reverend, if there's anything you would like to promote or tell the audience about, um, go ahead, and now's your time. If you'd like to tell the audience about anything, promote
Okay,
anything.
all right, okay. Well, as well as having my church, which is usually the last Saturday of the month in the Glasgow Theosophical Society, and everyone is welcome to that, regardless of your religion or whatever. Everyone is welcome to that. Everyone is also welcome to celebrate the Mass, so to celebrate the Eucharist and take communion. So you don't have to be an old Catholic if you wish to take communion. That's fine. I've mentioned Glasgow Pilgrims, so that happens on every Sunday, and the details for that are on my webpage, which is RevAlisonDunlopShanes.com. I think I've got that right. And as well as those things, I also run a paranormal conference called Supernatural Secrets. So it's a Supernatural Secrets Symposium, and that's on next June the 6th in the Queen Margaret University Union.
Mhm. I was actually going to attend a recent event, the Theosophical Society had yourself and Robert Owens. And
Paul Owens.
Paul Owens, sorry.
I think there, yeah, Paul.
Yeah, Paul, he's been on my show before.
All right, he's really
And
nice.
he's been on my show actually a couple of times, and it was in regards to the Overton and the Overton Bridge.
Yes.
You know,
And he's going to be talking about that next year at the conference.
yeah.
The talks, as well as those church things on before I do my mass in the afternoon, in the morning, I've got a Supernatural Secrets coffee morning in the Theosophical Society. So I try to get speakers, and I've got all my speakers lined up for next year. I'll be posting the advert for that shortly. But as you've mentioned, Paul Owens there, but there's another 6 speakers. They'll be talking about things from UFOs and aliens to ghosts and mysticism and various other things. It's usually quite a wide range of speakers that we have. So that's the 6th of June next year in the Queen Margaret Union in University Avenue. Tickets for that are on Eventbrite, but again, you can find that on Supernatural Secrets Scotland Facebook page. You can find out all the details about the symposium on these pages. And if you get your ticket before Christmas, your name will be put into the raffle. You'll get a free raffle ticket for next year. It'll automatically get put in the raffle. So if you get your tickets before Christmas, it's a nice Christmas present to get for someone.
Oh, I should get a free raffle ticket after this conversation.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I've had both you and Paul on. I must get a free raffle ticket. Come on.
You've done well, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Hey, so, Reverend Shanes, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, and thank you for coming on the show.
Pleasure speaking to you too.
Good night.
Good night.
And I believe we also have another guest ready to join us. His name is Tucker. He's been on before. So give us a moment and I'll get him on. Bad camera, mate. Read it. Can you move that so you can? No, so that's not visible. If you could, well, you can position yourself a little bit. There, that's it. That's it. Have you got the microphone? No. There's the microphone. Yeah. Sorry about this. Just connecting everything. Just one moment. And for Rubber Duck and Change Times, microphone port us we put in. It's there. Yeah, it's the left side. Left side. Right. For Rubber Duck and Change Times, you're going to be well aware who this is. So.
Who's changed times? Is that
Jordan?
Dash?
That's Dash. If you're still watching, Dash, you can continue leaving responses.
Okay.
And tell and ask Tucker any questions.
Is that easier?
So you need to add the camera.
Okay. Add extra camera. Doesn't support the audio though.
It will be going through the audio mixer.
Okay, that's fine. Let's see.
Yourself on it.
Yeah, no, I was just double checking. Add guest.
Yep.
Show on stream. There we go. Fantastic. There we are. How are we, people?
Hi.
Yeah, that's better.
Can you change the position of the camera, mate? That's really work.
There we are.
Yeah, it is. There.
Better.
And how are you today, Tucker?
Not bad. What about yourself?
Absolutely great.
I've been enjoying your show.
Have you? That was
Alice.
quite a long conversation, quite informative.
Yes. I think she had a lot of time to go over her paranormal stuff. But you know, I found it quite interesting when she said that there was an incubus in her room flipping her over, and you know, we can imagine the rest.
Yeah, I mean, being attacked by us, by a supernatural entity, just suggest this. So it's changed times and rubber duck on.
Yes, I can see the chat. I'm still working.
So if there's just to tell the audience, if there's anyone that has had any experiences themselves with incubi, succubi, have been attacked by any malevolent ghost, or have seen an apparition or a UFO, you can come on the show and relate your experience.
The link is in the description.
Yeah, the link is in the description, so just click the link.
Anytime you want to come on.
And you can...
You've got a smart device, you can come on through that. We'll be happy to put you up on screen.
So, have you had any supernatural experiences?
Well, I have told you about one before when I was in Lourdes in France, and I was on a pilgrimage with the Catholic Church, and I went to the holy water wells, and I spent the night in, is it a nunnery? You know, what would you call it? It's a massive chapel, but that's where all the nuns stay. And I saw what you could only describe as, you've seen the movie The Nun?
I've seen it.
That was the face that I saw as a child, and it glided across a hallway up towards the other side, and I didn't hear a footstep, and as the apparition, as we call it, turned round and looked at me, that's the face I saw, and it got from one side of the hall, which was a good 50 metres, to the other, and that face almost entered mine, and it had a distinct flavour to it as well. The flavour of citrus flavour. You know, I always used to say oranges, but that's not quite right. Not in the memory.
So changed times, the Reverend is no longer with us, but if you'd like to ask Tucker any questions, feel free, or ask myself anything, or if you've had an experience,
Jesus is returning to judge you, or change times.
If you've had an experience yourself, you feel free to click the link and you can come on audio format or welcome. Audio and visual. Do you believe in psi phenomena or anything like that? Do you think that's real? You know, we're talking about clairvoyance, precognition.
I would agree with that. Yeah. I think most people, if they're in tune with their life, can see what's coming. You know, whether it's precognition or not. You know, I think we're all kind of aware what other people do in any given situation. As long as you're in a routine, you can see when that routine is going to be changed. You can almost feel it in the ether. You know, if someone has bad intentions towards you, that will come out as well. You know, I think that as long as you are tuned into your own life and your own environment, you will find that you can perceive what's going to come.
Is that the same thing as precognition? Is that not just...
It's the only way I could see without, delving into being psychic and,
That's what I'm discussing. Like, with you, do you believe there is something different, such as psi phenomena, that's not just basically through memory, knowing what will happen in the future? Because if you go to work, 9-to-5 job, Monday to Friday, it's pretty obvious that next week you're probably going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Monday, Friday, 9-to-5 job. We're not talking about that sort of thing. It's sort of like maybe known in a way that you can't explain something that's occurring, and then you discover to maybe you're surprised.
The way you knew Celtic were going to get beat 3-1 today.
Yeah.
Were you psychic over that, or did you just have a better cognition of what was coming?
Yeah, I wasn't being psychic. I was just...
Yeah, but you were right.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Just adjusting the camera. I told you it's not good. Right. Well, do you know what? I'm just going to wrap this one up. I think this show's been going on about
1 hour and 45 minutes.
100 minutes, over 100 minutes. So if you have enjoyed, don't forget you can donate at Buy Me a Coffee. That is Caledonian Elixir / Buy Me a Coffee. There is a link in the description to that. Or you can help the show by subscribing, liking, and following. So thanks for joining. And our next show will be on, I believe, this Thursday. And
who do we have on the show?
Well, we'll be having a former soldier, a former US soldier who is currently based over in Eastern Europe now, and we'll be having a discussion about the Russia-Ukraine conflict. There is so much more to his background, but I don't want to give away, but it will be a very informative, excellent episode if you're interested in that old geopolitical quagmire that's taking place. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.
Goodbye and thank you. There we go.
No, end.
Okay.
Gold pressed platinum, slip strips and bars. If you ever find some, you can lose it in quads. Get a Ragdagino, spin the double wheel. Order a black hole, just depends how you feel. Yeah, it just depends how you feel. Gold pressed platinum, you know it's a gas. Morn vomits it up into a tiny little glass. Liquid platinum, more you amass. Better than bronze, cobalt, silver, nickel or brass. Silver, nickel or brass. We're living in a high society, living on station. Part of the alliance, the United Federation.